Hi, everybody. I'm Dominique Sachse, and welcome to this week's Over 50 and Flourishing. Today, we are talking about a subject that is something I'm going through, and possibly you at the moment, or have or will, and that is grief. My guest today has spent 30 plus years as a firefighter and EMT. He said the Lord called him to full-time ministry. He has served 17 years as a minister in a local church. He's now the pastor and chaplain of PCS Ministries. His motto is that God called him to meet people where they are, and he has ministered those in the community who are hurting, sick, dealing with death, trauma, or in need of pastoral services. And his name is Moe Mays, and I'm so grateful he's my guest today. Mo, I'm really happy that you're here today and that you drove in from a little bit out of town, but not that far. But your presence here today honestly means the world to me as a grieving daughter, and you have been through grief yourself.
Yes, ma'am.
This podcast is not only just for me, but it is for every person who has either experienced grief or is going to, and that includes everybody.
Right.
Nobody's spared from this.
Nobody's spared.
Yeah. Tell me about your journey. I know you were an EMT for many years.
Yes.
You've been with the Houston Fire Department,
Yes.
and then now a chaplain for 17 years, right? A minister?
Been a minister for 17.
Yeah. So walk me through your journey, because it's an interesting one.
Yes. Well, as you said, as a young man, I started out in the Houston Fire Department and served there for a little over 28 years. Have experienced grief in a number of different ways, and by losing my mother at 16. But God called me into full-time ministry late in life, and has trained me in a very special way, and gave me a heart for people.
Yeah.
And that way I can be with people and serve people in a crisis.
Right.
And our state convention of the Baptist, has endorsed me as a chaplain and has trained me in different ways there. And of course, I'm a police chaplain also, and have received training there. But I've recently started my own ministry, and it is to do just that: meet people where they are. Mm-hmm. And as my card says, it's where compassion meets grace.
Yes, and that's beautifully said. I have to tell you, as I was having to deal with the passing of my mother and the process, it was 5 days between the night she had her cardiac event until she passed. Mm-hmm. And during that time, there was a wonderful chaplain at Methodist who would come in, pray over her, pray with us. And I can't even describe how powerful, how comforting, and important that was in the moment. And I'm sure you see that when you're offering that for families as well.
Yes, I take it as a great honor to be called to come alongside a family in a journey of losing a loved one, or whatever pain they may be going through or experiencing. I don't take that lightly. Yeah. They need someone to come alongside, and I'm glad the chaplain at the Methodist did that for you. And I know quite a few hospital chaplains, and they're great people.
Yes.
They're there in a lot of loss, being in the hospital, but going through the experiences that I've gone through, and with the fire department, and as a pastor, and I was minister of pastoral care on staff, and so I walked these journeys with quite a few different families, and our journeys of grief are all different. and people heal differently and walk through it differently because our journeys are unique.
As we are, right? You mentioned the loss of your mother when you were 16, but you more recently suffered one of the most, if the most painful loss that there is, and that is the loss of a child.
Yes, ma'am.
And I'm so sorry.
Well, thank you. Matthew was a great guy, and he was bigger than life, and he loved people.
Yeah.
We love to talk about him.
Yes. Yeah.
Because he is. I miss that big hug and says, "Hey, pops," and he would come in and that he's 6'6", and he was just a huge man to hug. And I miss that.
Yeah.
But those are some of my memories. And I know in the sudden loss of your mother, you've experienced some of those in your walk each day is very fresh for you, I know.
It is. Before this interview began, we were actually talking about, you and I, the importance of talking about them. And we were sharing, and I shared with you that I feel almost an inexplicable sense of joy in the moment. And it's so odd because I don't quite know what to expect. I mean, I lost my father in 2016, but every situation, every way, every connection to a person is very different. And so I guess that also reflects in the expression of grief. But and I did find this to be true with him as well. It's just the more I spoke about who they are or memories or feelings or sensations, the closer I felt to them.
Yes.
And sometimes you
Their
think
spirit's still with you.
Yes, and that's what I guess it means by, keeping somebody's memory alive, is by speaking them into existence again. Right. So I want to walk through basically the process of grief and, coping mechanisms, basically. You are faith-based, so I'm going to assume when we talk about strategies in dealing with grief, faith plays probably the biggest role in it for you.
Yes, ma'am. In some situations, as I am on the Galveston County Critical Incident Stress Management team, is we work with first responders, and sometimes we cross people that we don't know their faith situation, so it's something that we take kind of easy, because when people are in crisis, they are very sensitive, and but if they want to speak about their faith in the Lord, and that's great, because that's where we take our comfort as believers through. We are not those that mourn with no hope, and so the perspective is different in different situations, and the journeys, as we said, are all different.
Yeah.
And some people sometimes, I use the approach of ministry of presence.
Tell me about that.
That is a time that I may just come in and say, Dominique, I know you've lost your mom, and I'm just here with you. You need something, you let me know. I just want to be with you, help you through this journey, and if you have a need, I'd like to fulfill it. And whatever that might be, we just kind of wait. If that's prayer, is that reading scripture, is that just taking a walk or listening to stories about your mom? Sometimes we need to kind of just sit back and read the room, so to speak, and so we know what to share.
I think, and I love that, and I feel blessed that I've had so many people who have come to me and offered that, just time, a meal, a space, a place, which is wonderful. And I think I'm personally trying to strike a balance between the acceptance of that, but not overdoing it and getting lost in company and preoccupation so that I don't spend alone time processing.
Right.
So let's talk about that balance of receiving the gift of a listening ear and comfort, as well as sometimes needing to be alone so that you feel.
Yeah, you need that.
Yeah.
You need that time to. It might be reminiscing about your time with your loved one, or just crying.
Yeah.
You know, crying is a natural process that the Lord has given us that is connected to our heart and our grief. Jesus wept when he lost his friend as he was here on earth. And so it's a natural process, you know, and I know some people that want to hold that in and you know, sometimes you need to scream, you know, there's all different feelings that you may experience. And so you need that alone time sometime to do whatever you see that you might need to do to relieve that.
Was there a specific moment or epiphany for you that helped you in handling your grief that you feel this audience should know about? Because it's a journey. I mean, you don't get over grief, you get through it.
Right.
You know, that is something that I have repeatedly heard. And you say everybody's different and every walk is different, but is there something special that has guided you in this walk?
Well, of course, my faith is strong, and I knew my mother, my father. I walked through both of those seasons in my life, but when it comes to Matt, it's unnatural. You know, that's the first thing that kind of comes to your mind. You know, that we're not supposed to lose our children.
Yeah.
You know, so the journey and the walk's a little different.
Yeah.
Sherry and I are very close together, and we share our times together and grieve together, but you know, I don't know, it's different each day almost right now. We've just passed 6 months.
So it's fresh.
It's so fresh, and there's different things that happen during, you know, each day that might make us think about Matt, you know, but mostly it's happy thoughts. You know, Matt served in our military in Iraq and was had a troubled mind from that. And his comfort dog is with us now.
Yeah.
And she reminds us of him. And so many other people that come around. If they knew Matt, they knew Tulip. And so that's a special
thing. Keeps his memory alive, yes, by having his animal. Right. You know, it's got to be interesting walking grief together as a husband and wife.
Yes.
How do you do that? Because not everybody experiences or expresses grief the same way. So how do you assist each other in that?
I think the easiest thing to say is allow each other to grieve how we need to grieve. You know, Sherry explains it real well. I feel like the Lord is just holding my heart and just cradling it. And that's her description of what she feels. And that gets her through each day, you know, but sometimes, you know, we start crying, we may not stop, you know. So there's different waves. Speaking of that, a pastor friend of mine shared that with me, like standing on the beach and the waves coming in and you're standing in the water, and every once in a while that big one will come and crash.
Right. Boy, that's a really good analogy.
Isn't it?
And then sometimes it just recedes and it's calm.
It's just calm.
Yeah, that's very indicative of this
But
process.
sometimes those crashes happen.
Yeah, boy, do they ever. I'm so enjoying your calm presence and just your perspective on this. We're going to take a little break, and we're going to come back and help further guide our audience on this process, about this process, and the fact that it is a process. And there are resources and ways to be helped so that you don't feel alone.
Yes.
So we'll be right back after this. Welcome back. We are talking about grief and how to process with a friend of mine, Moe Mays, who is, my gosh, an expert in the field, which, you almost don't want to be considered that, but you have taken what you have witnessed throughout life. You have taken pain. You have taken meeting people where they are, as you say, in moments of tragedy, as well as the tragic death of your son just 6 months ago, and having to, my gosh, to process that kind of pain.
Right.
And to come here and be with us to talk about navigating this space, which is evergreen, ever-changing, and everlasting.
Right.
Right? I will, and we've talked about, the role of faith if you're a believer, and how important that is, obviously, for you and your wife, Sherry. It's important for me. It guides me through. But there are other methods and modalities to help. And I will also share that I've started seeing a psychotherapist, a counselor, because I want to have another outlet. I have my pastor, I've got my church, but I also want to make sure that I am processing things in a healthy way. So let's talk about those other layers and things that we can do and seek, because grieving can lead to prolonged mourning, which can be unhealthy and not let you live your life.
Yes.
So let's talk about that.
Yes, you definitely want to seek help if you're not getting past some of it. You can't let grief take over your life.
Yeah.
One thing I think I shared with you the other day was, I heard from someone years ago that to try to take our pain and turn it into purpose. I told the Lord when Matt passed away that He took him home. I said, I know there's a purpose. I want you to show me that purpose. And He has been faithful in many different ways. But yes, if we experience a loved one or a friend that cannot just seem to get out of that haze, I guess you could say, that they do need to seek other help. But just like we've said, it's a journey, and it's a long journey.
Yeah.
Close people to us, loved ones, I don't think they ever leave our heart. So the journey is going to be there. So we need to seek whatever help we need to keep that journey straight. And be able to live effectively, because our loved ones are not going to want us to do that. Be swallowed up in our grief, and so we need to process. I tell some people, exercise, is that a big part of your life, or reading books, or walks, playing tennis, whatever sport or physical activity that you enjoy, those are outlets, and those can help. And Matt was a big hunter and loved the outdoors, and so those are all things that we take in and remember. And his youngest brother, or younger brother, he has a brother and a sister, Melissa and Mason, and Mason loves to hunt with him and has those memories. and then Melissa has her memories. So they're so we all process things different, but we need to.
Yes.
No matter what.
I like that you're mentioning that. You bring up something that's so foreign to me. I'm an only child, so I don't have siblings or anybody else to talk to my mother about. Just people who knew her. But I'm really fascinated by the family dynamics that you're speaking of, and the importance of, I guess, working together as a team in this process. And you said, not everybody expresses grief in the same way.
Right.
So as a family, how do you handle that when you've lost a loved one? And let's say you feel comfort in talking about the loved one, but somebody else is struggling in that. How do you bridge those gaps?
Well, that's I'm glad you asked. That was something that happened to me at a wedding just the other night.
That's interesting.
A young man was very hesitant in saying that I knew Matt, and my first instinct is what I said to him was that's great. Can you tell me about it? I think sometimes we're fearful to approach someone that has experienced loss, but we shouldn't be. I want to encourage people that are around others that have lost, that are in grief, that share with them. If you have experience with their loved one, you like to hear it. I know, just as we've shared, there's a number of people that shared about your mom.
Yeah.
And you even have those then recorded.
I do, and it's beautiful. It's a gift.
It's priceless.
Yeah.
Those are things that you can, even when you're alone, you can sit back and look at.
And I think what's so special too is we have our own memory of the person that we've lost, but everybody else has a different one.
Right.
And so when you hear their story, it adds to the person. Yeah. It's a perspective and a dimension that you may not have known or seen in how they touch somebody else. Yeah. So that really brings me to the importance of, like you said, people not avoiding you, not tiptoeing around the subject, but really there's a way to come in. And so what are some of those ways to come in so that you feel like, I can talk about Matt, or I can talk about Mom, and there's healing in that process.
Right. And that's something I talk to people quite often about, because, let's face it, it's unnatural, and some people come in up to a loved one and they don't know what to say. And sometimes it's better not to say anything, but anytime you have a story about that loved one that's been lost, it's generally healing. Of course, we don't want to compare, our and go, hey, I know how you're feeling.
That's the worst,
That's
right?
the worst to say.
Yeah.
We want to share in a positive way, and usually that's in memories, if we have a memory.
Yeah. I think people, it's probably a coping mechanism where they don't quite know what to say. And so there's that situation where if you've lost a parent, somebody will come in, oh, well, I lost mine, or I went through that too, and I think they feel bad that they're trying to show compassion in comparison, and I've been there too, but it's not meeting you where you need to be met.
Right.
And so you feel badly, because then you think, well, I sort of need to feel and process and talk about my grief, but now I'm inquiring about your loss.
Yeah.
Right? I mean,
Right.
it's there's some strangeness that happens in this process.
I remember when I was 16, on the day of my mother's funeral, an older man actually told me, son, I know how you feel. And I remember at 16, the angst or anger that built up, that I'm sorry, you don't know how I feel.
Yes.
This is my mom.
Right.
And so we need to take that into consideration when we approach someone that has had a loss. You know, you've lost your mother. I've lost my mother. Mm-hmm. I can't sit here and tell you, Dominique, I know how you feel. I lost my mom too.
Right. Different experiences.
Different relationships.
Yeah.
You know.
What should people be saying? How do you encourage people to approach those who are going through grief?
Well, in a positive way of, you know, as we talked a little earlier about ministry of presence, because, you know, the one that is grieving knows it's awkward too for someone coming in, but I usually recommend them to just say, I'm sorry for your loss, and I want to be here for you. Mm-hmm. You know, if you need a hug, need some water, you know,
right.
Need me to fix dinner for you, or buy you some dinner, or wash clothes, or you know, help around the house. There's a number of different ways that we can serve people in a time of loss that helps us too. You know, because we want to help. Generally, if you've got a good friend that's hurting,
yes,
you want to be there for them, but sometimes don't know how.
Yeah, I agree with you. I think those acts of service and kindness and presence are the door openers. Right. And they can either lead to just quiet time appreciating a meal, or it could lead to a full-on conversation about the person who has been lost. But it's at least an open and a safe way to get in without being intrusive, or without maybe saying something that could be hurtful or off-putting. Yeah. So I love that. I love just the gift of presence. It's everything. So I've got to share, you know, in my journey is very, very fresh. I'm only a few weeks in, and I know this happens a lot, and we were talking about it earlier, that you go through these very strange waves of being hit unexpectedly, kind of in the middle of nowhere. Something will trigger a memory, or, you know, it's like you said with the wave, you'll crash, right? And then there are days where there'll be just sort of a general malaise. You're tired, you feel drained from it all. But then there are days where, you know, people will come in and want to serve you. And so, you know, you go out and you're busy and you're having dinner, and, you know, friends are trying to show you a good time, and you're actually having a good time and you're lost in the good time. And I found myself, you know, going hours without thinking about my mom. And then there's this weird sense of guilt that comes in. And so I really want to address that there's no right or wrong way to process this. No, right? Because it's just going to come in these peaks and valleys. That's what I'm finding.
And, you know, I'm sorry I didn't know your mom.
You would have loved her.
She's a great person from what I hear, you know.
You would have loved her.
And I would love to talk about her, you know.
Yes.
And but just hearing some different things that different people have said, I think she would go, Dominique, just have fun.
Yes, she would.
Wouldn't she?
She would.
I think she was that kind of person.
Yeah.
From what I've heard, you know. And so there's no guilt in that.
Yeah.
You know, the grieving process is, first off, it's necessary, but we've got to realize it's natural too, and it's unique to each one of us. And one thing that we did, Matt was 39 in December when the Lord took him home, and in June this year, he would have been 40. Sherry and I and the kids, we have a home place up in Arkansas, and we all went there. That's where Matt is buried, in Arkansas, and he loved that place. So we all met there, and we celebrated his birthday, you know, together there. And it was a great time together. It was a healing time. So I encourage families to do those memory times, you know. Celebrate your mother's birthday when it comes around, you know, if that's what you feel like you'd like to do.
Yes.
You know, by yourself, with friends, however you want it to be, you know. I cringe when I hear people telling people how to grieve.
Right.
Oh,
There is no right or wrong way to
no,
go through this.
no.
Yeah.
There's so many families that I've met with, and I've had a family member saying, "I've been telling her she needs to get over this," and I
Ouch.
just, yeah,
Ouch.
it's just so painful to hear because that is not helping.
No.
You know,
Right. I think judgment needs to be removed from everything and anything.
exactly.
Yeah. Don't cast judgment because that's your perspective, but that's
Yeah.
not somebody else's. And
'Cause-
we don't walk in other people's shoes. We don't know. And like you said earlier, grieving is the heart. And sometimes the brain is overriding the heart. And that's what you're saying is happening in other people too.
Right. Yes, ma'am.
Yeah, in terms of judgment.
Yes. You know, you asked about Sherry and I a while ago, and you know, our grief is different. Even though we're one in marriage,
Yeah.
our grief is different. She gave birth to Matthew.
Yeah.
And, you know, we're just honored that the Lord gave us him for 39 years,
Yeah.
you know, and we got to experience him and love him, and we'll see him again someday.
Yeah, I love how you speak about him, and I see the joy in your face. You know, for those of you who are listening on Apple or Spotify or wherever you listen to podcasts, it's really wonderful to see Moe talk about his son and, you know, 6 months out. And it's not to say that you might not cry, because you might, but you're also smiling
Yes.
because you feel such love for your child, and the memory of that love is beautiful and beautifully witnessed in you.
Yeah.
And I thank you for the expression of that. So much more to unpack when it comes to grief and just moving forward and processing. But you have two people right here who have experienced losses in very different ways and are processing grief in our own unique ways. But we are here processing and talking and sharing, and we will continue to do so on the backside. We'll see you then. Welcome back to Over 50 and Flourishing. My guest today is Moe Mays. He was a firefighter for 30 years, called into full-time ministry, served for 17 years as a minister at a local church. So he is well qualified to be with me today to talk about something that not only am I going through, but most likely many of you are going through too, and that is the processing of grief after losing a loved one. Moe's experience with that is very, very raw after losing a son just 6 months ago, and his mother at the age of 16. So he is processing grief as well. And we're talking about the different phases and stages of that, and, you know, sort of what to expect and how to handle and different ways to handle. And we're all unique. And so I think the message that we're trying to convey here is that there's no one way. There's no right way or wrong way.
Correct.
But it's just to allow it to be. I think if I were to say, and wrong is not the right word, but maybe unhealthy, is to not allow it to happen, right? To suppress.
Right, to suppress.
Yes.
Because I feel like it's such a natural process. Things that are natural are going to happen sooner or later.
Sure.
And I think if we bottle that grief up, that it may come out in a time that is not so natural for you, and is not healthy for you too sometimes.
Yes.
You know, as our military members and our first responders and all those, we encourage to talk and debrief, so to speak, to where they can kind of unpackage what they have bottled up and what they see or experience. So a loved one's death is very close, very tender, and so our grieving process is very necessary.
Yeah. How do we go through this process while still maintaining life's responsibilities and obligations? Because for some people, the tendency is to just sort of go in a corner and hide out for a while, but realistically, that's not possible.
Yeah. We have to kind of pick up and stay in life, because we are still alive, and we do have other responsibilities in life. Just as I've shared, Matthew, he has a younger sister and brother, and they both have families. We have grandkids. In our lives, we have to continue on and love them and love on our grandkids, which is so healing.
Yes. Oh, for sure. The joy.
We enjoy our grandkids and our time with them, and Matt loved them. I wished I could just show pictures of Matt loving on people.
Yeah.
Because there's been so many times that in the last 6 months that people have shared with us, that I was kind of down, and Matt was there. And those are the things that help you and go on through your grief too. That those are positive things. That so you want to seek those things because you do need to continue working or being a mom or teacher or whatever you might be.
Yes.
That doesn't stop. And like I said a while ago, referring to your mom, she'd want you to celebrate.
Oh, for sure. I've coined an acronym. What would Audrey do? WWAD, WAD. What would Audrey do? And I remind myself of that because, if I feel like I'm stuck for too long or was just not, getting myself moving and doing in certain areas where I needed to, especially areas of self-care, or just, a friend calls and says, let's go have dinner, and I'm really not feeling it. Well, what would Audrey do? She would say, go put on your makeup, go get dressed, and get out there. Get out there and live. And when I reframe it that way, it puts a smile on my face because it reminds me of her and her spirit and just being a pistol. And she would want that for me.
Yes,
and that's how I feel like I keep her alive and her spirit alive, by being that way for her. And it's joyful. And it kind of goes back to those rituals and those things that you were talking about, that you're not supposed to sit still. There's a time for that, but there's also a time to get moving without feeling guilty.
There's, the Bible even tells us in Ecclesiastes, there's a time for everything. That kind of reminds me sometimes of in the grieving process that we there's a time to live and there's a time to die, a time to dance, it says, a time to laugh, and those are all things we need to take in mind when we're going through our grief, and WWAD,
right, or whatever
so
we
neat.
coin. But do you know what I'm saying?
Right.
And it's just like what you described with Matt and having a 40th birthday party for him in his special place.
We had fireworks and everything.
Oh, I love that.
He loved fireworks.
Yes.
And the grandkids all had sparklers, and it was a fun day.
It's interesting that we all have different ways of also remembering somebody. And to honor my mother, she was never, she just did not like memorial services or funerals. She didn't. She just said, they're too morbid. That's not how I want to remember somebody. So when I thought about her remembrance moment, I knew it would be a party. I knew it would be a celebration of life. And I had so many people who saw that video, like you did, who thought to themselves, oh my gosh, my loved one would have loved to have been remembered in this way, or you've really opened my eyes to how to do it maybe differently. And that's not to say my way is everybody's way, but I think that we need to honor the other person and ourselves in a way that speaks to us. And even that looks different too. right?
Right. It does.
And again,
But
no judgment.
yes, it's so neat that you shared so publicly that celebration.
Yeah.
Because that being on YouTube or whatever could possibly have a ripple effect that would help people from then on. For years to come. They may pop that up.
Sure.
And say, this is how Dominique and her friends and Holly and all them celebrated her.
Yes.
And what a neat thing, because a celebration of life is just that. It's what you make it to be. And it doesn't have to be, as Audrey, what'd she say, morbid and
depressing and morbid and just not her thing.
She's correct there.
Yeah.
It can be what you want it to be, and but it's very healing.
It is.
It
is. And it was, again, joyful for me to share her and that experience with so many people who didn't know her personally, but knew her through the videos and felt a very strong sense of connection to her. And it gave me, in a way, some closure to be able to bring that to my audience and have them feel a part of that celebration and feel a part of that sort of finality, as we all kind of go off on our own after that and heal and process and deal with the emotionality. And it's so interesting. Before I did this interview with you, I wasn't sure how I was going to feel. I've cried so much. I've cried so much on air, in videos. There's been so much crying. I thought, am I just going to be crying through all of this? But I have to tell you, you're so uplifting and just so lovely in how you encourage us to handle this process, and so inspirational as I see you in your walk, after your son's loss. And it's very powerful to see somebody embrace something and not run away from it. Yeah. And you and your wife, Sherry, have handled it with such care and dignity.
Right. Matt will be living in our hearts and minds forever. Yeah. As long as we're here. And his siblings, they loved him very much. And talk about emotion.
It's okay. Let it out.
It comes in different ways on those crashes, know. But I always think back when Matt came back from Iraq. I was in Baltimore airport when he got off the plane. He had been in fights and stuff in Iraq and lost a close friend.
Yeah.
And he hugged me. I remember the hug that he wrapped. It's a picture on my Facebook, matter of fact, that he is hugging me, a young 21-year-old man that would not let go. And I remember that hug, and I feel that hug.
Yes.
And Matt experienced a lot in his life, and we memorialize that. We love him, and we'll never stop loving him. Yeah. And just as you'll never stop loving your mom.
No.
And she'll always be with you.
Yeah, I feel that.
Yeah.
I feel her presence many times and in many ways, and I'm grateful for that. Yes. I'm grateful, as sad as I am that she's not here anymore. I am grateful that I feel her and I hear her. And like you said, the more she is spoken of, the closer she is to me.
Right.
You've brought with you some valuable resources to help people through grief, and I want you to share what those are. Okay.
There's so many things out there, but in the church setting, there is a program called Grief Share.
Okay.
And Sherry and I have been through this and have found it to be helpful. It's it's kind of in a group, and it's sharing, just as we've sat here and shared today and celebrated our loved one that we've lost, and that gives you the opportunity to do that in a group also.
And how do people access this? It's through churches, and it's nationwide?
Right. You can go to griefshare.org.
Okay.
And pull it up. And one thing it'll show you is a place to put your zip code.
Okay.
And it'll show you where they're hosting grief share groups.
Wonderful.
And you can reach out to a local church or whoever may be hosting it at the time.
Okay, so that's grief, GRIEF, share, SHARE.org. And we'll put a link in the description as well for people to access that and see, what they have in their local community regarding grief. There's something so powerful in numbers and being around others who are going through the same thing. So I think for a lot of people, just finding a group and listening to other people and not feeling so isolated would be a wonderful thing to do.
Yeah.
But you also have something that we can do on our own. And sometimes I would say definitely, I'm a big reader. I love learning. I love learning things that guide me through a process, as well as journaling. I find it to be very cathartic to get things out, but also to take things in. So you've got a system here too that you found that I want to share with our audience as well. So tell us about that.
Well, this is a 4-book series called Journey Through Grief, and our pastor now, Pastor Brian, has sent us this book. The 4 books are scheduled over a year's time, 11 months' time. And you receive the first book 3 weeks after, and then 3 months after, and 6 months after, and then 11 months after.
Okay.
So it's a four-book series that comes in a package together like this, with envelopes that you can get these and address them to someone that is experiencing grief, and it's something you can send them as a gift.
Wow.
You don't know what to say? Send them a
little manual, and they're small. It looks like they're easy to get through.
Easy read, and just a good kind of little devotional to walk you through different phases of grief, and I was very touched by this being sent to us, and I know others would do also, and it is put out by Stevens Ministries, and that's stevensministries.org.
Okay. And you said you found those on Amazon, correct?
Right.
Right. So is it
Can't
called?
You find everything on Amazon?
Yes. Amen to that, Mo. Yes, you can.
If you don't know where it is, look on Amazon.
That is very, very true. So the whole series is called Journeying Through Grief. Is that correct?
Correct. Yes.
Okay.
This is the
from Stephen Ministries.
Cover page.
Wonderful. Yes. So we will also put a link to that, and I'm really looking forward. And it's interesting how these books are scheduled.
Yes.
So it's as they know what to give you when you need to receive it.
Right. That's what I think is really
smart.
Neat about it. Yes. Yeah. Because that was one thing we really didn't touch on is sometimes it's that time after. Mm-hmm. A loved one is gone, you don't hear from people anymore.
Yes.
Be a friend, reach out and check on people.
Mm-hmm. Even when you think the healing is done.
Even if you just make a call and say, hey, I was just thinking about you, Dominique, and just want to let you know that, WWAD, or whatever they may want to say to you, and because that's a feeling of community. Mm-hmm. We need to know. Yeah. We're not people that want to be alone.
No, we want to love and be loved. Right, that's what our time on earth is all about. Right.
So.
Yeah.
Yeah. So timing is good also down the road.
Well, this has been a beautiful journey for me to have in conversation with you, just talking about the process, not feeling alone
Yes.
in the process, and just understanding that there's help out there. And, how I'm feeling and what I'm feeling is normal and natural,
Right.
and just a part of it.
Yeah.
But, there's no denying the pain and the heartache, and we have to get through.
Yeah.
We have to get through.
We need to normalize our grief.
That's right. And I think you've done a great job in doing that for everybody.
Thank you.
Thank you, Moe, for being here today.
Thank you for having me. It's been a real pleasure.
I personally hope you were able to find some comfort in today's conversation and realize that you're not alone if you're going through grief. And if my sharing and Moe's sharing of our personal story helps you in any way, helps you realize that your process is the right process, and we're all going to have it, and we're all going to go through it and have to get through it at some point in our lives. But I have always been of the belief that sharing is the only way to be able to have a sense of connection and community and to have an opportunity to heal. It's just not possible to do it alone. Speaking of, if you would like to connect with Moe, we're going to put a link to his ministry, so you'll be able to find that. Of course, all the materials mentioned during the podcast. Speaking of podcast, if you are enjoying what you're hearing, please don't forget to rate, review, subscribe, and share me. Share me with those that you know and you love to help the platform grow. If you're watching on YouTube, of course, there's a comment section below where you can leave your comment on today's subject matter, or if you would like to comment on anything else you would like to see on Over 50 and Flourishing. I really appreciate what you have to say and the direction that you would like to help take the podcast. So thank you for being here, and until next time.